If you've seen Spider-Man Homecoming, you know that that movie kind of changes the Marvel Cinematic Universe timeline, and that changes a lot of things that we thought were once true. So at the beginning of Spider-Man Homecoming, we see the end of the Battle of New York, and we've got Vulture teams with his cleanup crew, cleaning things up. And once that scene ends, it then says 8 years later. Now, for people who don't really pay attention to kind of like the movies and what goes on and the time differences that appear in the movies, that wouldn't like mean anything to them. But people like yourself and me, the 8-year gap kind of changes a fair amount of what we thought was true about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. What this means is one of two things. The first theory is that the Phase 1 movies take place in a much more condensed space of time. So obviously you've got Iron Man, which takes place in 2008, and then you've got Iron Man 2, The Incredible Hulk, and Thor, and probably the end of Captain America as well, taking place in 2009, and the Battle of New York taking place in 2009 as well, which would mean that 8 years, give or take, would mean that it matched up with Civil War taking place in 2016, because Spider-Man Homecoming takes place in 2016 as well, just shortly after Civil War also. So yeah, that's one theory. The second is that we were correct in what we previously thought of the Marvel event movies taking place when they stated, or when they came out rather. So Avengers taking place in 2012, the same year as to which it was released. And then the 8-year gap, meaning that Civil War and Spider-Man Homecoming take place in 2020. Now, I'm not sure as to which of those two theories is correct. I like them both. It kind of changes Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. a little bit, I guess, as that would mean that these characters have been together for a very long time, so almost a decade, but it kind of hasn't felt like that with what's been going on in that show. I don't know as to whether this retcon to the MCU will affect that, and how it may affect the other shows, and what it means as to when things are taking place. But if you think about it, they kind of have played loose, fast and loose with like as to when things are taking place and as to how much time is between each movie and whatnot. And I kind of can see why they do that, because at the end of the day, these are movies based on comic books, and comic books play fast and loose with the time, really, pretty much. So I think they're kind of doing things to kind of what suits the films best. And the fact that there's this retcon, this new piece of information that we didn't know existed before, that we do now, it doesn't really change much, but it does try and make you kind of reassess as to what's going on in the timeline. I want to know as to what this means for the other movies. Obviously, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, the two that we've had, are definitely set in 2014, as we've been explicitly told that numerous times. We were even told that in the second film, because it does say like 34 years later, after 1980. And then yeah, so it's definitely 2014 in those movies. I'd like to kind of see as to, because I've seen like a fan version of the MCU timeline, and they've gone through literally everything. They're probably gonna have to rework it now, because that is the old timeline. I don't know which version they'll do, whether it's they're going with the, oh, it's 2020, or is to, no, it is 2016 as to when Homecoming takes place. And obviously most of Phase 1 took place before 2010 and was actually 2009. But yeah, it's interesting that they've done that. I've never seen anything done like that in film before, and it was quite a surprise seeing the 8 years later, and then quickly going, wait, 8 years? It's only been like 5 years since the Avengers, or Avengers Assemble as it was called in the UK. So I'm not sure as to why they did it. I hope they can. There's probably explanations out there online in regards to it. I heard one, something to do with they wanted Peter to be in his sophomore year or something in Homecoming or something like that. So I don't know, but yeah, I mean, essentially, it doesn't really change much unless they've stated specific years in the past. But even so, again, it wouldn't change much, because if you know comic books, then you're familiar with retconning anyway. And for Joe Public, who doesn't really pay attention to these kind of things, it wouldn't mean anything to him or her. So it's both, it's important for fans because they want to know as to when things take place. But then on the other hand, again, it kind of isn't. But it was just like, whoa, what? I would prefer it if it was the first version with things taking place in phase 1, much closer in proximity. But that does leave quite a large gap of, well, quite a large gap of time where kind of nothing happened and there was like nothing going on. So will those be filled in by kind of like those special comics that they do, those kind of 2-issue comics that they do for the MCU? Maybe, maybe not, but it'd be interesting to see as to how large that gap in time is, because we were not even quite sure as to when it would restart. I guess I'd have to theorize that the Winter Soldier took place in the year it came out, which was 2014, if I'm correct. So that would mean that there's like a 4 or 5 year gap that we don't have any information for. Whereas if you go with the other theory that it's 2020, again, there is time skipped, but we're not sure as to where in those 8 years time has skipped for, or as to when things are set. So maybe the Winter Soldier in this version, the second theory, would take place much later. So instead of 2014, maybe that was 2016 or 2017, with Civil War taking place in 2020. Who knows? There's probably going to be loads of theories coming out, but we'll get a solid kind of a solid answer, I think, at some point. But let me know what you thought. Like, comment and subscribe, and as always, I'll catch you on the next one.